Talking up Buccaneers here at Ballard Sports Media. It's Christian Ballard, sports journalist, here today talking up the Buccaneers draft strategies and much more with James Yarcho of Locked On Bucs. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's get into it. I guess the big thing I would ask first is what are you hearing as far as the rumors at 19 for the Bucs this year? What are we hearing so far?
It's really tough. I mean, the Bucks have put themselves in a great position here where heading into the offseason, everyone was talking they need an edge rusher, they need an edge rusher. They still do, but now it's not the glaring need that it was because of the addition of Hassan Reddick. So the way Jason Light and Todd Bowles have this roster set up now is that they can go with 4 or 5 different positions at pick 19 and be okay. And one of the great things about this draft is that while the elite talent is so little, you have maybe 10 to 12 guys that you could consider truly elite. The really, really good starting caliber talent is super deep. So guys that normally would go in the second or the third round, you're going to be able to find, into the beginning of the fifth. So even if the Bucks say they address edge rusher at 19 and you think, okay, well, you still need a linebacker for, to line up next to Levante David because, is Anthony Walker really going to be the answer? You can get a starting caliber linebacker in the third or even the fourth round. Same with corner. The secondary depth was just atrocious last year. You had Jamel Dean missing time because Jamel Dean always misses time. You had Zion miss time, Tyke Smith, Antoine, Whitehead, Edwards, all these guys miss time. So you need a safety, you need a corner. Well, you could still get those guys on day two. So the Bucks have themselves really in a position to truly take the best player available. And I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot, and something that I've really hammered on Locked On Bucks is that best player available doesn't mean the actual best player available. It's always the best player available at a position of need. So if Shador Sanders is the number one player available at 19, the Bucks aren't going to take a quarterback. So you have to kind of look at it through that lens where, okay, who are the best edge rushers, corners, safeties, linebackers, wide receivers, interior offensive linemen, defensive linemen, who are those best guys, and kind of narrow down who you think the Bucks are gonna look after.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that does kind of answer question too, because I was going to ask, is there a position they absolutely need on night one? And I think you hit the nail on the head at like edge and linebacker, just kind of help out the pass rush and everything, because this isn't the defense that won us a Super Bowl. Some of those guys have come and gone and everything like that. But just to kind of reiterate, like are you really looking like at getting the needs without urgency, or is there urgency that says at pick 19 or wherever we pick in the first round, if there's a trade or something, like it it's got to be like linebacker, it's got to be edge, like that's the goal for night one.
I think it just has to be defense. If Jahad Campbell from Alabama is sitting there at 19, I don't think there's any hesitation. I don't think there's any debate. It's going to be Jahad Campbell. But you could also look at if Donovan Ezeraku or James Pierce is sitting there. Those are guys that could anchor your edge rush along with Yaya Diaby for the next 5 years. If Hassan Reddick is a one and done in Tampa, you could look. I'm not a big proponent of drafting a safety at 19. But if you have the opportunity to draft Malachi Starks, who is the best safety in the class, and he is elite at his position, and you can line him up with Antoine Winfield Jr. and secure the back end, you could do that. Same with Jahdae Barrett out of Texas, the cornerback. And he's a guy typically that I would rule out. He's a little bit small for a corner in a Todd Bowles defense. Bowles likes those 6+ foot guys, the bigger, longer players. Jahdae Barron's only 5'10", but he is so good and he is so intelligent that I think he's kind of the exception to what they generally look for. So I don't think they're going to force a certain position. It's all about the collective. I've often compared the NFL draft to an orchestra where all the different sections and all the different instruments have to be playing in unison. So if the Bucs go with Malachi Starks in round one, while I'm not a big fan of taking a safety in the first round, I'm also not going to go on my show and blow up and overreact. Say, I can't believe they took a safety. No, 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 no. Hold off. Wait and see what the collective of this draft class is and how they addressed these different positions of need. So, yeah, I would like to see them go with an edge rusher or a linebacker at 19, but again, the depth there is so deep that I wouldn't overreact to any position. They could take a wide receiver at 19 and get another weapon for Baker, have an heir apparent to Mike Evans, and I would think, okay, let Jason cook.
Oh, for sure, man, and he could cook up some really good picks, over the past few years, and you just brought up wide receiver, as far as heir apparent to Mike Evans. Speaking of wide receivers, they re-signed Chris Godwin, which took a little while. We were kind of worried he was going to go off, and people expected the Steelers to get him or something. But we bring him back, 3-year deal around, I think it was like 66 million, something like that. Uh, they still got Mike Evans, as I mentioned, but how can they continue to invest in Baker Mayfield at quarterback this offseason, especially within this draft? Just talk about some prospects we have our eyes on and maybe the different positions. Obviously, I like Bucky Irving at running back and everything like that. We drafted Otten at tight end a couple years ago, but just kind of talk to me how they can continue to invest in Baker.
Yeah, I think if they're going to go offense, it's going to be a receiver or a running back. And we all love Bucky. We like Rashad, but Rashad's entering a contract year. Is he going to want to stick around and be, the play second fiddle to Bucky Irving? We don't know. There could be an opportunity for him to start elsewhere. You could, make the easy quick connection to the Las Vegas Raiders. If they don't draft Ashton Genty, they could look to sign Rachaad White. The familiarity there with Brady as an owner, Spytech now as their general manager, that would be a fit that would make a lot of sense. But regardless of your thoughts of what Rashad's going to do after 2025, the Bucs still need another running back. They only have three. They got Bucky, they got Rashad, they got Sean Tucker. You need someone to round out that room. But you take a look at wide receiver, you have your big three. You have Evans, you have Godwin, you have J-Mac. So Evans, contract year. You hope that he signs for another year or two and continues playing for the Buccaneers. There's no guarantee in that, and he's on the plus side of 30. He's not going to be in the NFL much longer. So if you have the opportunity now to bring in a guy who can slide into that role in the next couple of years, but in the meantime, he offers a legit weapon for Baker Mayfield, because as much as I like him, Trey Palmer's not him. Trey Palmer is not that dude. He has not panned out the way a lot of people have hoped. And I know there's still a lot of optimism around Jaden Mickens and what he can do. But if you can get, a big bodied elite speed receiver, that's what I'm looking for in this draft. The Bucs don't have a guy in the receiver room that has that elite over the top speed. So that's what I would be looking for, is a guy, not under 6 foot. I don't want another like Trey Palmer clone. Give me a big body guy, but that has that big time speed that can stretch the defense out. That opens things up for Bucky and Rashad out of the backfield. It opens things up for Otten. It opens things up for Godwin out of the slot. So those would be the directions that I would go in. And then the other one, I don't think they're going to draft a tight end. I've seen a lot of people list tight end as a need. That doesn't make any sense to me. You have Kate Otten, you have Payne Durham, Devin Culp came on strong late in the year. You still have Cokeeft. Tight end set, leave that alone. But depth along the interior offensive line. After the Bucs lost Robert Hainsey, they don't really have a backup center. God forbid something happens to Graham Barton. You're going to need a new guy that can be that swing offensive lineman that can bounce between guard and center should someone go down. So offensively, wide receiver, running back, and then interior offensive line are really how they can help Baker Mayfield the most.
I think so. And then getting back to defense just a little bit, I think you had touched on this just a bit, but cornerbacks usually a go-to for the Bucks when it comes to day three and stuff, safeties. But talk about what you've seen as a collective for this defensive back class. And talk to me a little bit. Usually it's on day 3, but could we even look at day 2 or maybe someone in the first round that they could go after to help the secondary?
Oh, and there's tons of guys, and for those that watch Locked On Bucks or listen to Locked On Bucks, they know I have been pounding the table for Benjamin Morrison, the corner out of Notre Dame. This is a guy to me that if he doesn't have an injury and has season-ending hip surgery in October, number one, the national championship might look a little bit different, but we are talking about a guy who is being talked about as a first round pick. Benjamin Morrison is absolutely phenomenal. Being able to get him in the second round, to me, you're basically doubling up on first round prospects. The other guy from Notre Dame at the safety position, Xavier Watts. Todd Bowles said, I want ball hawks. You are not going to find a safety in this draft class that is more of a ball hawk than Xavier Watts. His interceptions, his forced fumbles, his nose for the football, and the versatility. We know how much Todd Bowles loves versatility in the secondary. You have Christian Izzian and Tyke Smith that can both play safety. They can both play slot corner. Tyke can even bounce to outside corner. Xavier Watts can line up at free safety. He can line up at strong safety. He can line up in the slot. He's even lined up as an edge defender. So that's another guy that I look at on day 2. He's tough though, because he's one of those guys that could sneak into the back end of round 1, but he could also fall to the middle of round 2. So it's really hard to get a gauge on where Xavier Watts is going to end up landing. But then there are some other really fantastic corners that the Bucs can get on day 2. You know, Darian Porter out of Iowa State. He fits the mold of a Todd Bowles corner. You know, he's 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in there. You know, he's a big dude. And you know, even you look at the safety position, Texas, Andrew Makuba. You know, he is a perfect fit for the Todd Bowles defense. Ohio State's Lathan Ransom. He's another guy who could be day 2. He could even fall into day 3. So you could be talking about a 4th round pick at safety for the Buccaneers and Lathan Ransom, and he is a dog. So you can find starting caliber corners, starting caliber safeties, you know, well into day 3 of this draft. And there's plenty of guys out there that I think Todd Bowles would be really excited about adding to this defense and getting a little bit of help for Antoine back there at safety and giving yourself a little bit of an insurance policy when you know Jamel Dean's going to go down for, you know, 3 games. And then he's also going to miss half of probably 2 or 3 others because of injury. And I fully expected the Bucs to move on from Jamel Dean in the offseason. They didn't do that. They're hanging on to him, but you know, this could be the last year of Jamel Dean in Tampa, and you're going to look for a guy that, you know, is a high IQ player. That's I think one of the big benefits of Jahdae Barron. Despite his size, he is so intelligent, but we've seen the growing pains of players in the secondary in this Todd Bowles defense. None are a better example than Zion McCollum. He struggled a lot in his opportunities as a rookie, stepped up because of injury in year 2, and then last year he was, you know, absolutely fantastic for the Buccaneers. So you get a guy in there who can start to understand and learn the system, becomes a little bit of a situational player by year 2. He's your bona fide starter.
For sure. And then the final question, and I think maybe you had touched on you've talked about the offense today. You've talked about a little bit about Baker Mayfield. And you look at the quarterback depth, you look at this quarterback class. Baker's obviously the guy for Tampa right now. He's doing a great job, I think. You got Kyle Trask to back him up, and I think we still got like Michael Pratt on the depth chart and everything. But like for this year's class, is this something where you want to go after the undrafted free agent market to build extra depth? Is there a scenario where you could see them draft a quarterback? I would probably think not, but I got to hear from you on that, you know, ultimately with leadership of this offense.
Yeah, I think they'll bring in a couple of undrafted free agent quarterbacks just to be camp bodies, you know, to be there for rookie mini camp, to be there at OTAs. This is, to me, this is a terrible draft to need a quarterback. I'm not a fan of any of the quarterbacks in this class. I think next year is much better. The Titans are probably going to take Cam Ward. Hopefully he pans out. I don't have a lot of confidence. I don't think Shador Sanders is going to be anything more than basically following a Jameis Winston type of career arc. He's going to get some wins. He's going to have some magnificent plays, but ultimately, he's not going to be the guy that's going to lead your team to the postseason, to lead them, to a Super Bowl, and is going to wind up following the Winston Mariota career arc, where they're veteran backups that can come in and they can get you some positive plays and some wins. But I do not care for this quarterback class at all. I don't think the Bucs are going to be looking at that at all. Maybe they look at the 2026 class if Kyle Trask ends up moving on after this year. He only signed the 1-year deal. I was kind of surprised he did that. But when you look at the landscape of the NFL, there weren't really going to be a lot of opportunities for Kyle Trask to go out there and start. So why not just stay with the team that he's been with, stay with with a group of guys that he knows and that can trust him in offense. While it's probably going to change a little bit with Josh Grizzard, it's not going to be an overhaul the way it was from Byron to Dave Canales. Even the change from Canales to Cohen was pretty minimal. There were some tweaks, there was some verbiage changes, but the system itself wasn't a drastic change. That's going to be the shift from Cohen to Grizzard. It's going to be minimal changes. Grizzard's going to put his spin on things, but by and large, Kyle Trask is walking in knowing the offense and is going to be comfortable in that situation. So look for a couple of guys in undrafted free agency that the Bucs can bring in for rookie minicamp. Keep one or two maybe for OTAs, but they're pretty much set as far as the quarterback position is concerned when you look at the depth behind Baker.
Absolutely. And then I'll open it up to you. Anything that you need to tell the people where they can find you, and ultimately what we should know, maybe that we didn't touch on about the Tampa Bay Bucks for 2025 in the draft, or maybe going into the season. I'll leave it to you and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, you can find me 5 days a week on the Locked On Bucs podcast. You can find that on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts, on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. And then as far as the draft and the rest of the offseason is concerned, look, the Bucs freed up a lot of money. They can roll that over and they can use it for some extensions that they'll need next year. But don't forget, free agency isn't over. Free agency is not anywhere close to over. So after the draft, maybe look for the Bucs to potentially make a move or two, bring in some veteran leadership because of guys that they couldn't land in the draft that they maybe wanted to. There are still some pretty decent free agents out there. So we're going to get a second and a third wave, and the Bucs are going to look to continue to improve this roster. But overall, this team is sitting real pretty for 2025 if they can continue to build and grow as they have over the last couple of years with Baker. And then just fingers crossed that they stay healthy this year, man, because if they stay healthy, they add an edge defender, they add a linebacker, they add a couple of guys in the secondary. The Bucs should be in the conversation with teams like the Lions and the Commanders and the Eagles for, favorites to come out of the NFC.
Awesome. Thanks so much, James. You have an awesome day. And for those watching, love you guys. God bless and go Bucks.